All right, hello and welcome to the 12-week metabolism reboot recap. I am here with one of my clients, April, and she is going to share some of her experience working with me, working within the 12-week metabolism reboot, and we're so excited to be able to share this with you all. Hey, April, thank you for being here with me.
It's my pleasure. I'm excited.
Awesome. Awesome. So on our weekly calls, and just so y'all know, we do what's called a weekly co-working call where we have others who are enrolled in this program. We all come together on Zoom and just talk about triumphs, tribulations, the successes, the challenges, and then ask for accountability if that's something we're working on, or ask for some support and feedback on possibly how we can work through whatever's happening at the moment. As of now, April has been with me. We're at nine months that we've been working together.
Yes.
Awesome. So that would be essentially 3 of the 12-week metabolism reboot sessions. And we do that on a 12-week session plan because it takes a while for us to develop new habits. And one thing that April has really pointed out to me and why I wanted to get on this call with her and share with you all is the structure of the 12-week metabolism reboot has just been it's made all the difference. So I thought let's talk a little bit about that, April, and from your point of view, what were some of the highlights of working together that first 12-week round?
I think, and yeah, you and I have talked so much about the structure. I um, formerly referred to myself as a lifelong fat girl.
Mm.
Um, but I have been on diets and in exercise programs and those things literally since I was a little girl. And nothing was ever successful and sustainable. I was able to succeed to some extent, but nothing was sustainable. And that led to a cycle of defeat. And what I have loved and what has helped me so much through the 12-week metabolism reboot is that there is structure. But the first thing that got me was it's not my fault. So when you go through so many things and you have failed so many times, you feel like you are the failure. And there's nothing that, I knew how to exercise, I knew how to diet, I knew what I needed to do, but previously thought I just wasn't strong enough to do it. I didn't have what it took. And through really our first conversation of learning that no, my body just wasn't responding in the way that it was designed to respond because of the yo-yo dieting and the back and forth and the American diet and so many other things. So in that first conversation, I had that glimmer of hope that maybe there was something else out there that I was missing. And that's why I said, let's do this. And then getting into it and seeing the really comprehensive structure of everything, there was nothing that was left out. And that was such a help to me. Um, Honestly, even if I didn't use it the way it was supposed to be used, the structure was there, but the gentleness was there of that's okay. Let's figure out the why. How can we tweak it? How can we do things differently? So I never felt like a failure at all, which was really the brand new experience of not feeling like a failure or not assuming that I was going to fail.
I think that's huge. And thank you for that feedback. I always love to hear that because I have put a lot of deliberate work into this. A lot of intention goes into it. And plus it's been refined over decades of working with people. My background as a chiropractor has always been rooted in nutrition because nutrition and nourishment is the foundation of our health. And the anti-nutrition is the foundation of disease and the chronicity of disease. So yeah, when you say structure, when we talk about structure, the key here is there's structure, but it's fluid and it works and it is designed for the person to fit that structure around their life, right? Yeah, and that's
Absolutely.
that's the key. So many diets and these programs, they're super rigid. Yeah, there's structure, but you gotta be like looking, okay, it's 12:04. I need to eat this meal replacement bar, which is choke this down, and it's all these, it's very rigid. Yet ours is all teaching you to be intuitive with not only what you're eating, how you nourish your body, but how you move. And as important as all of that physical is the mental, right? Like that mental stuff. And whew, when you had those insights, it was so powerful to watch you, bring those things together and then start sharing it with everyone and with me. So, how would you kind of talk to the mindset work? And it's not necessarily structural mindset work, it's more healing that relationship with ourselves, right? Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit? Mhm.
it has certainly been a journey, and I think there's so much more understanding of how powerful our mindset is, whether it's in business or in personal life, in relationships. But the healing of that relationship with food was obviously integral in being able to make this sustainable. And the first part of that was realizing that I wasn't a failure, but I had been using programs that did not set me up for success. And
Yeah.
that took, I mean, there's so many little pieces to it of, my own belief about my body and how I related in relationships and in work, and understanding that this was not about me personally. It was about the programs that I was using or the things that I had learned that were not really the way our bodies were designed to be. And when we try to manipulate those things, it was not effective. The structure of allowing me that opportunity, so taking away the stress of, am I doing this right? Did I get everything right? That stress did not exist. So I was able to just figure out the whys and change my relationship with food, honestly, for the first time in my life,
Mm.
and to feel like I was in control rather than food being in control. And I think that's a common occurrence for people who have struggled with weight. Maybe for those who haven't, that sounds bizarre, but that's what it was. It was really the food having power over my choices, and me now in the place of, no, I have the power over that. And because of the way I have moved in the process, I don't, the cravings aren't there. So the mind cravings, but the body cravings aren't there. I'm not hungry. I'm not a slave to the things that I was before.
Yes, and so when you say the food, it's almost like the food would be calling you to it, and that was based on the hormones, right? The hormonal cascade, and there are more than just sex hormones in the body, and this is kind of for the audience who's listening. When we hear hormone, we think the sex hormones, but we have metabolic hormones, y'all, that are very powerful. And then we have stress hormones like the cortisol, which is the primary one that we talk about. And then I break down a little bit, not too nerdy, but sometimes I go down a nerdy rabbit hole. But I think it's so important for people to understand what's at work behind their body and how it's designed. This design is perfect. The food and the lifestyle that we live now, the stress, the constant bombardment of negativity, that's not natural. And that is when we were, our design is not set up for that kind of life. So as we're learning about more of the way our body responds, and each person responds differently to stress as well as food. But and we've talked about this bazillions of times, a lot of what is out there and marketed as food is not food. It's not nourishment. It might be quote unquote calories. It might be some flavors. It might have originally had some nourishment in it, but by the time they process the heck out of it, a lot of that nourishment is depleted. So we look at real food, and that's why you'll never see a meal replacement shake or a bar or a patch or a potion or anything on anywhere in my work, because it just isn't it is not food. It's just not food. Plus, it's not sustainable, right? I mean, right? So, and so maybe contrast this with some of those other programs that you've been on or that you've, experienced, and how that's so different. And even though at first you kind of think you need to have that because we've been conditioned by the obesity profiteers that you have to go on a diet, you've got to eat this certain type of food or this certain berry that only grows in the jungles of somewhere, it's like the craziness now that you're seeing more clearly. Let's break that down a little.
Before I do that, I gotta say, I love it when you get on your nerdy rabbit trails. Um, and that was honestly something that drew me to you into the program because it is based in the actual science of how our bodies function. So
Mhm.
again, it was, oh, my hormones are out of whack.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I'm hungry all the time.
Yes.
That's why, I can't lose weight because I'm hungry. And so understanding the science behind it and okay, understanding a glimpse of the science behind it was really helpful in again letting me let go of the the trap that I felt like I was in. Um, so as young as I can remember, I was in a study at the University of Pittsburgh that was all about eating less and moving more because I was the fat kid. And then I remember my mother and I going to Elaine Powers. I had the little leotard on and the tights, matching colors and the little machine that jiggled you. Um, Weight Watchers, lots of those different kinds of programs. And I, nothing was sustainable. It's expensive, first of all. And the it just wasn't set up in a way that allowed me to figure out what worked for me and to understand all of the deeper reasons why that was happening. There's a lot of work to be done mentally, but it's not the crushing work that I thought it was going to be. It was simply just discovery. It
Love
it
that.
wasn't, I'm a social worker and obviously believe in therapy, and I think those things are important. But I also think that's sometimes why we resist accountability because we're not ready to go there. And this wasn't forced, it wasn't pushed, but it was the gentleness of what is underneath that, and how do we create an environment that supports you in that. Um, so that was huge for me.
Mhm. And separating our worth from our weight,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because we especially as women, we're taught we have an inverse relationship, or we have an inverse worth related to our weight. So it's almost like the less we weigh, the more we're worth. And that may sound weird to hear, but if we really unpack that, and we do a lot of unpacking of the thought processes, right? And the identity. And it's about, okay, well, let's distill that back down. And then often we've all had these experiences throughout our life. There's often an anchoring experience or an anchoring thought or something that someone who meant well, especially you and I's growing up, when we grew up in this whole eat less, move more, but low fat, the whole thing, where we were taught, oh, honey, that's going to make you fat, or as if this
Mhm.
body having excess body fat on it was such a horrible thing. You should not want to be that. So we it's all these parameters that create this identity, and then we do identify as a certain person, and then that runs our entire life. In business, we don't want to get out and be visible because we feel that we aren't up to being seen. We don't have that. We're not seeable. We shouldn't be seen because we are XYZ, whatever identity we're going to put on ourselves and label ourselves, when they're not related at all. Yet in our world, in our society, they're enmeshed, like they don't have any separate ability, or they're not inseparable. So we work a lot on that, and it's like, okay, go back to some of those core experiences what are some of the first words you heard about your body? Other people talking about your body as if they had a right to, right?
Yeah,
That stuff. And then it can go back, years and years and years. It can go back to when we were 6 and we were signed up for a study. And all of a sudden, we realized we're not like anyone else yet. Before all that, we felt like we were like people, we belonged, we had friends. And then all of a sudden, we start to separate ourselves because this is different. The color of our skin is different. Our religion's different. The way our body looks is different. I mean, insert whatever the difference, right?
right.
And we're taught that that means we should separate ourselves. So it goes so much deeper than what we eat and don't eat. And that's what I love bringing to the table. That's the fun part. And, getting to watch people really come into their own. It's the best.
We've talked a lot about identity, which was a brand new thing for me. And I didn't realize that I was identifying as the fat girl.
Sure.
I mean, it was just who I was. And seeing the shift in that was very powerful for me. I remember thinking when I talk to you, I'll always identify as the fat girl. Um, but that's not true. I don't identify as her anymore.
Wow.
And that does inform every other part of me.
Give me an example when you say that. What do you mean by that?
So I don't walk around wondering, if people are looking at me thinking, "Ooh, she could lose some weight," or when I'm at a restaurant, should she be eating that? There's no longer, I don't pay as much attention to what other people are saying or thinking or doing, because the reality is they were not thinking about me to begin with.
Right.
Um,
True.
but but I always felt self-conscious. I always felt not good enough. I always, um, was worried about, do I look good enough? Am I fast enough? Am I good enough? And I don't worry about that anymore.
Yeah. Has it changed your behavior with others? And where I'm going with this is as an Enneagram 2, we're both Enneagram 2s. If you don't know what the Enneagram is, I will happily go down a nerdy rabbit hole with any of y'all about the Enneagram another time. But we do a lot of introspection and uncovering, and we unravel these things from our past, our behaviors, what develops our personality. And as Enneagram 2, especially on the social scale, we are helpers. We are constantly out there taking care of others. Social worker, chiropractor, yeah. I mean, it informs every decision we make in our lives. But as we start to sort of, again, unpack who we are, these experiences, what makes it like, how have you noticed that you're acting differently with others? And you said some earlier where it was like, I don't really care what other people think. And that's not a callous thing. That's more I have a solid, more loving relationship with myself, that what others think, if they are even thinking about me, doesn't doesn't make a difference in my life. So how have you noticed your behaviors different with others?
So, in doing some reading on the Enneagram, oftentimes a two can do things for the approval of others. And I started to recognize, when I was doing that, and I think I had grown through a lot of that. I think as a younger person, that was absolutely why I did everything that I did. But it's allowed me to kind of pause and think, is this for me or is this truly for them?
Mhm.
And had someone recently say, sometimes twos are, especially Christian women who are twos,
Mhm.
just assume that because that's what they're supposed to do. No, I am actually through and through a two. So there's no question about that. But I do have to think, is this for me or is this really for somebody else? And um, so I'm not doing it out of my need anymore. I'm doing it just because this is what I want to do. for that person or in this circumstance. And I don't feel obligated to do the things I was obligating myself, but
Yeah.
I don't feel that obligation anymore.
Yeah, that's great. And as we heal our relationship with ourselves, because as this isn't obvious, but we don't often think of this, our relationship with ourselves is the longest relationship we have in our life. It is
Yeah.
the one person we cannot escape at any moment in time. So we're having a more loving and compassionate relationship with ourselves. And those of you out there who have done some of this work, the mental work that it takes to develop ourselves in our personal development journey, that there's that monkey mind, and there's that part of us, our ego or our psyche, that is constantly at us, right? And it's just that constant chatter that's going on. And it's that voice right now, for those of you out there who are going, what is she talking about? It's that voice that's saying, what is she talking about? I don't have that voice. It's that voice. It's that constant background noise. And it's the voices of all the people who may have meant well, the mothers, fathers, teachers, and preachers of our lives that may have meant well, but some of those words have stung. And for those of us who are the heart type in the Enneagram, the emotions, we're very connected to that part of ourselves. Sometimes we're not as connected to the intellectual part, not meaning we're not intelligent, because we be intelligent, but it's that we don't live in our heads, we live in our hearts. And so part of this is learning how to be in our body, be in our heads, and be in our hearts at times that serve us, right? So instead of just doing it for that approval of others, um, it's doing that because it really does mean something to us. And then we got real clear on, well, what is truly meaningful to each of us. And that I think, when we realize our motivators, and then we can have more measurement of success, and we can let ourselves off that proverbial hook, like, all right, that's the past, man. I can't do a thing about that. And I certainly can't predict the future. So I'm going to work on me now in a way that supports the future vision of me. And like we talk about, well, what would she do? What would my future version of me, who's successful and strong and healthy and vibrant, how would she make her day look? How would she be sleeping? That kind of stuff. So it is so much more than what you're eating or not eating and when, right? But we do
Yeah.
learn all that. We talk about why we need protein, and I teach you how to know the amount of protein that is best for your body. And then we look at our carbohydrates, and making sure that each of those are, make your carbs count, count your carbs and make them count, is one of the principles. So maybe share a little bit more about the actual food part, or the nourishment part, if you would.
Sure. So that was obviously the beginning. And, um, I, because I'd been on so many diets and because we've done whole foods and vegan and, we've done a variety of different dietary plans, um, you kind of go into it with, all right, let's see. I knew that whole foods were better for us, and that's exactly what you were encouraging is whole foods, the real stuff, not the things in a box and a package and all of that. And then you start to think, oh, that's going to be time consuming. And the reality is, you get into a groove really quickly of what does that look like, and having a plan. And so first we cleaned out the house of all the things that were full of sugar, because I was clearly a sugar addict, no question about it. um, and just cleared out the things that would make it more difficult, and then started on one meal at a time, just changing things up. So I that was really important for me too. It wasn't, overnight we're going to do it all, and this is, be all and end all. You're going to live or die here. It was a slow progression into, okay, how do we change this one meal? and for a while and get into that groove. And then let's change another meal and get into that groove. So I really appreciated the slow entry,
Yes.
because it allowed me a little of the, I think we all go through this, I'm gonna, one last meal, what's
Oh,
that gonna look
yes.
like? And
Yes.
so it wasn't an overnight transition. It was a slow transition that was really helpful for me. But with really clear explanations of the why. Why are we doing this? Be sure that you're drinking enough water, and why that's important, and be sure to get this amount of protein and why that's important. And we also didn't limit carbs to where I was starving all the time. I expected to be hungry all the time because that's what I was in every other diet, hungry all the time. And I'm not going to say I've never been hungry, but that was very minimal. And 9 months later, I can't even give you a really good example of, I was starving here. Um, so that was helpful too, that my body was being nourished enough that I really didn't have to fight the hunger. I had to fight the brain of I want to eat
Yeah.
because I'm happy, sad, bored, anxious, nervous, whatever it was. Um, but very rarely was that true hunger. And then the other work kind of came in to what is really going on. And then there were tools for that too. So the food part was probably one of the easier parts to do because it wasn't, you know, it's not rocket science. We're not, and having the chronometer app that really kept track of it all for me, um, made it even easier.
Yeah.
So, scan that food, put in broccoli and how much you got. And so I didn't have to do the math either.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that so much about having something that tracks it for me. And because I used to be averse to it as well. And you've shared with me that at first it was like, oh, I got to track because it's, we have this idea of all these other programs, right? Where you've got to track the points and all those things. But it really is just about seeing on a screen, with numbers like, oh, okay, when I eat this way, this is what my body is being fed, and breaking it down into those macronutrients of protein, fats, and carbohydrates. And then knowing, okay, well, what are the better fats? What are those healing fats? And we get really down and dirty with the fat talk, because we know that fats, what we're eating, are incredibly helpful, or they can be incredibly harmful. We've been taught that these seed oils, or quote unquote vegetable oils, of which there are zero vegetables in them, but these vegetable oils, that they're better than the oils that are from an animal or from other whole foods. It's not correct. And when I go in and talk about the inflammatory nature, and give just these little glimmers, but then also that stuff that spurs your own inquiry, right? Like you go and you do some research because you're like, I want to really know this. And then once that veil of, that vagueness that we learn out in marketing, you start to really become a good marketing sleuth, aren't you?
Yeah.
That 99% of what we hear about quote unquote food is just good marketing. Yeah.
And learning, when a lot of diets tell you low fat everything, low fat cheese, low fat milk, low fat, no fat on your meat, eat chicken and fish. And I obviously had done that, but never felt satisfied. And learning that it's fat that allows your body to feel satiated was like, oh, I'm a little hungry. Let me put some butter on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or so that one fact alone was mind blowing of I don't have to be hungry and just suffer through it. Oh, here's a tool that I can use to just get through that hunger thing. I've eaten, but what is that? And so the next day we're building in and having that opportunity to, okay, what was missing? Let's tweak this.
Yeah.
So again, I haven't failed. It's not falling off the wagon. And even if I did go ahead and eat something that I, now wouldn't, it was just, okay, well, let's unpack that. Let's look at that differently. Here's some things to try, see if it works.
Mhm.
So, not, I can't believe you did that.
Oh, never. Yeah. Right. Yes. And so you nailed it with, okay, we look back at the day like, okay, because it's on, it is on chronometer, it's on our screen. We can say, all right, I ate like, okay, I just didn't have enough healing fats in there. So the next day you just add a little extra olive oil as a drizzle, add a pat of butter, whatever it may be. And it's our body gives us those cues as long as we're paying attention.
Yeah.
And there is a deliberateness and an intentional nourishment. And I love that word nourishment versus just feeding ourselves or even fueling, because our metabolism is so much more than just our fuel. Yeah, our metabolism runs the show. It is literally our metabolism that is the difference between that moment we're alive and that moment right after. Because we still have all the same cells, but our metabolism has stopped. That is our
Yeah.
life essence in the physical plane. So the more we know about that and the more we can enhance it and optimize it, the better. And we are the expert on ourselves. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. There'll be some similarities, some foundations, but we have differences. We have different experiences. We have different bodies that have been through different things. We might have, different levels of insulin resistance. That's another thing I love to nerd out about. But insulin resistance it's rampant. Like, I think the latest estimates are like only 1 in 10 adult humans in this country have a healthy metabolism. 1 in 10. That means 9 in 10 are on some variational level of disease or chronic injury to their system. So it's then knowing a little bit more, okay, well, what does that even mean? That sounds really big and heady, but it's basically when our bodies are literally marinating in insulin, and our body eventually, our cells go, I am not listening, because it's too much insulin. It has to create like a firewall essentially. And then when we get that healed by dialing down the carbs, or as I call it, the garbage, dialing down that garbage, allowing our body to actually be able to utilize the insulin and helping our pancreas not have to pump out so much of the darn stuff, that eventually those cells get recalibrated. And our cells are constantly turning over. We know that. Most people realize we're not the exact same body as we were a year ago. Some cells are similar, but all that aside, we constantly have that renewal opportunity. So over time, as you're replenishing cells that were never insulin resistant in the first place, they are able to work per the design. Like, they're able to come on board and be like, we talk about insulin resistance. I never had that. Yeah, and I like to anthropomorphize the body, and it makes me happy and gives me joy. I have to entertain myself. But it's that kind of breaking down the complexities to make them more understandable. Like, oh, now I see when my body's exhibiting this behavior, it's because of this action or inaction. And then that
Exactly.
takes away, right? And that takes away that I'm doing it wrong. It's like, oh, my body just needs a little assist. I'm not being the greatest sous chef right now. I need to step it up. Let me dial up what I'm doing for my body. We're allies in this life. We're not
Yeah.
a
It has allowed me to step out of the emotional roller coaster, hamster wheel, whatever you want to call it, of the diet process,
okay.
and recognize that I have a machine to work with. And the machine has not been maintained well for most of 54 years.
Okay.
So it's going to take some time, but all of the parts are there. And I didn't have any known underlying health issues, which was huge. But in the back of my mind, I was just a ticking time bomb because of my family history, because of my genetics, because of the way that I had lived for 54 years. But understanding that there are things that we need to put in place to help this machine work better. Yeah, there are some fixes that we need to do, and once we put those fixes into place, then I immediately started to realize, oh, this is functioning differently. And it feels different. So, okay, what's next? What's the next part? And again, it took away the emotional piece and brought it back to, no, this is my body is a tool that I have been given to use and to care for, and how are we caring for it? So it allowed me to be gentle rather than harsh with myself. And the mindset of, okay, this is feeling off. Why is that? What do we need? What is my body telling me? Which was brand new as well. Um, what is my body telling me it needs? And I've learned with cortisol, the stress hormone that we are all, that's rampant, honestly, everywhere. But when I've had a stressful day, I'm going to take a bath and go to bed early because that's the best thing I can do to heal all of that. I can't take the stress away, but I can give my body the chance to heal rather than feeding it junk that it does not need that will then set back every other part of the machine. So that's been really powerful as well.
I love that. And had you ever even thought of that concept before, or nothing's ever taught
No,
you that? Or yeah.
no.
And I look at this as almost helping someone understand that user's manual, that we ideally would have been given when we were born. And, like each person comes with one of those. It doesn't happen that way, but we have similarities, yet again, we have some differences and nuances. But the better we can understand what's at work in our body, the better steward for our body we can be. And the interesting thing about our machine, or the human machine, the body, is it's a dynamic machine, meaning,
Yeah,
it's not like most of the machines we think of, like this computer. It's a very complicated thing, but it can be figured out, and there it's kind of linear, like it's either working or it's not. The human body, oh, it's mass perfection, but there's so many little things, little inputs that can change, and our body can adapt. She's like, all right, cool, check, 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 done, adapted. And then we do that over and over and over, but eventually all those inputs, they're so erratic and so not in congruence with the way we're designed, our nature, that eventually the body's like, all right, all right, I give up, go ahead, do your craziness, and I'm just going to deal with whatever I can. And
yeah,
eventually we get that separate from our body, and then that's where that war starts. And I'm all about peace. I'm a hippie at heart, so I'm all about make love, not war. All the things. And with our, and again, because of this is the most important relationship we have, healing a lot of that relationship. Now that's not going to happen in 12 weeks, folks. I want to make sure that people know it's about managing expectations, right? And when we ramp up, I call it the wade in part of the process. As we're wading in, we're kind of like, oh, okay, that feels good. I like this. I like this. Then eventually we're fully submerged in this new way of being, a way of eating, way of thinking, that it just feels like water to a fish. Like, what are you talking about? Water. This is just the way I live. And
yeah,
then that is those moments, those aha moments where, wow, I'm different. It's not so much anything else in the world. It's we become different. We become more of who we really want to be. And then that's how we go out in the world and make our impact. So to me, it's never about the weight. But I talk about weight because, number one, that's what people are talking about. And that's what we've been conditioned to think that matters. Weight is a data point, right? It's a lagging marker. So it's something that comes after whatever actions. And we talk about this in the wealth management space and in business all the time. There's lagging and leading indicators or KPIs. It's just merely a data point. And so knowing what that data point individually, the one data point, is useless, means nothing. Now, if we look at a pattern, all right, now we're getting somewhere. We look at that pattern based on actions taken or not taken. Now we're cooking with gas, right? Now we can make decisions. And then it's a matter of those decisions that become our habits. So we talk a lot about habits, not in a way of, you're just in the habit of being certain. There's never any judgment, as April has very clearly stated, and that is key. I mean, there's never you're doing it wrong, because there's no it to do, but there's a here's how you learn how to incorporate and rewild and renature yourself, because we've been just taken so far off that natural path. And I think that when we have these conversations and I hear from others in our in our ecosystem, that's, I think, the take home for me is like, yeah, that is the difference. It is about you figuring out you, instead of, oh, well, what does Dr. Sam say I should do? Because I don't do that. I say, this is how the body works. These are the things that help this amazing body do her work the way, and optimize it. And then this is behaviors, and this is why we choose behaviors. These are some of the behaviors you're modeling. So let's have you dig into those, you know. And I think that, to me, the more I listen and have these conversations, the more I know that is truly unique.
It is. And I think um, clearly your nature is to support us in whatever the journey looks like. And we do each have our own journey, and I appreciate that. Um, but you encourage the finding what is working.
Mhm.
And I think before it was always, this is what works, and you're just not doing it. You're
Yeah.
not working hard enough, calories in, calories out. So it, I never felt like I could keep up. And I never, even if I did keep up, could I keep keeping up? And there wasn't, it wasn't that. It was, okay, well, how did that feel to you? And, you know, what do you think would be helpful? And then we had a dialogue about how to make it sustainable or how to get over the hump
Mhm.
or it so it was a process of there's lots of pieces to this puzzle, and how do we fit them together the best way we can for you. I have always been averse to tracking um, and accountability.
Mhm. Okay.
I think you and I had that conversation. I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a valid response. I don't want to. All right. Well, let's see how that sits with you, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I knew that what I had always done was not successful. So there was part of me trusting you and trusting the process in it. Okay, fine, I'll do this.
There were a couple of those, y'all. There were a couple. All right, fine, I'll do it. I'll report back next week.
Right. Um,
Yeah.
but in the process, I learned how very important that is for me,
Mhm. Okay.
because it was not accountability to you. It was accountability to you, but more than anything, it was accountability to me. So I learned that when I don't track, when I don't weigh, when I don't, it signals something in my head that says, oh, it's a free day. You can have all the ice cream you want. And then when I get back on the scale, I go, oh, guess that wasn't a great idea. That's not really what I wanted. But there was no judgment. There was no anything. It was just, okay, tell me about that.
Mhm.
And then I had to say that the accountability and the tracking is for me, but allowing me that space and that time and that struggle was really huge, because otherwise I just rebelled. Fine, I'm not going to do it then.
Sure.
I'll show you,
Right.
as if it was for you to begin with, but or for
Right.
them to begin with.
Sure.
So that was really powerful for me. And now that I am very close to our set goal weight,
Mhm.
I don't think, oh, well, when I get there, I'm not going to have to weigh anymore.
Yeah.
No, that I will always be. And you hear about people that just weigh all the time. It's just, that's their norm. That's okay. It doesn't, that is my norm. I need to weigh on a very regular basis, probably every day, just to keep me cognizant of where I am and where I want to go. And it helps me build in and keep the habits.
Got it. Yeah. And for some, like we talk about, for some, I don't recommend weighing at all. Yeah, it depends on our emotional relationship to that number. And if it's damaging for somebody because of past history, we don't even look at it. We look more at clothes or your energy or how well you're sleeping, because there are different indicators for different people. And then over time, as we heal that relationship with this number, we realize, okay, it's just a lagging, it's a data point, and we can dissociate the meaning to it. It's literally just our relationship to gravity at that moment, and it can change what 3, 4, 5 pounds in a given day, depending on the time. That's why consistency matters, consistent time, consistent machine or scale, all the things. If you go potty before, then make sure you go potty before you do it the next time. All that stuff, it matters, and that's where the science and the data, the intellectual part of this comes in, and then separating the emotional part, but then also celebrating those changes, and the wow, I'm in a such and such size now that I've never been in. That is something to celebrate. All those wins, or when our clothes are just feeling better, it's like, this scale's not budging much, but my clothes are fitting differently. I'm sleeping better, and better sleep leads to better everything. So it's a lot of those, and that's why we track stress level for the day, what our sleep was like, times, and then looking at what our weight is. If somebody is a daily weigher or a weekly or a never, it's not something somebody has to do. Ideally, we can learn how to just view that as a data point, so we're no longer emotionally charged by it. Yeah, I love it.
And I think understanding what motivates you
Yes.
and building those things in. I am motivated by the numbers,
Mhm.
and I'm motivated by I think we all enjoy the wins, but it's, I have sort of made it a test for myself in, how many how many days have I kept track of things? And oh, I don't want to break that streak. And that's not anything that you put on any of us, but it's me seeing the data points and looking at that and oh, well, can I do this again? Or you know, it's
Mhm.
just the internal stuff. And I think that's so important for us to realize that we are motivated by certain things, and what is it that will help you maintain and continue to be excited about the changes that you're seeing and what you're doing rather than dreading every single day. And that's what most diets are. I'm going to get up, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to eat the whatever.
Board. Mhm.
Right. um, so finding those ways to motivate myself and make it a game.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, and have some fun with it. I mean, some of it is like, okay, this is just something I have to do, but that's a lot of life. And then other things, it's okay, let me look back. I have a decrease on the scale. That doesn't mean I'm any better a human. I have an increase on the scale. That does not mean I'm any worse a human. It's now I look back at the day 2, 3 before and go, "Ah, what's been going on? Oh, stress has been off the charts. No wonder, right? Because cortisol comes in and she pushes all the other hormones out of the way and says, this body's mine. I'm in charge here because she is. So if we have to look at our stressors and then look identifying, okay, what can we get rid of in our life that is stressing us out? Are we being too much of a people pleaser? Are we doing too much for others and putting ourselves not even on the back burner? We're like in that little broiler thing underneath, like we're just not even on this on the surface.
Yeah.
So we have to look at those things. And yeah, we can white knuckle. I mean, most of us, we're pretty strong people. Like we've been through some stuff, we've survived. We can white knuckle for, the best of them. But is that sustainable? And do we deserve to live life like that? No. we deserve to have a life that is not only one we want to live, but one that we're like jazzed up about living. We are under of the understanding that we're here at this point in time for a reason. What that reason is different to each of us. There is no one reason. I think part of that reason is be, just to be, just to be, and just to be a vessel of love and light for the world, and that doer of good, but not doer as in things you can check off a list. It's just we are good. So it's bringing all that together, and then, oh yeah, nourishing our body better so our body can keep up with us. And I got into this work because I wanted my brain to be able to keep up with me. I have big plans. I still got a lot to accomplish in this world, and I want my thinker and my brain to be able to keep up with me. Those diseases people are dealing with, dementia, all, the whole gamut of that, mental illness, mental well-being, are, how that's cascading down. There is so much research coming out now about the work you and I are doing, the way we live, that is showing the health of people being restored simply because of the way they're nourishing themselves and what they're no longer doing. To me, I mean, that's the no-brainer to me,
Yeah.
is we are so at charge, or in charge, of what our now is and our future, but we have to do the things. And part of that is breaking the process down and healing our hormones. Those hunger ones that definitely affect the sex and the reproductive hormones. All the things are interrelated. There's no I can separate this out, and then, oh, and we'll do all this stuff, but we're going to ignore this one part. It just doesn't work that way, you know? And I didn't make up the design. If I had, I think that was pretty cool, because the human design is absolutely incredible and so dynamic. Even when there is a disease process happening, can kind of look back at that disease process and think, okay, what is that disease made of? What is it a lack of, and what is it too much of? And that's usually the continuum, right? I mean, like we've learned here with insulin, it's either too much glucose, too much insulin, not enough this, maybe cortisol's coming in and being a bully. All of those things come together. And so we can look at it and go, okay, this is what I'm working with. Now, what can I do differently? And stop doing or do more of, right? And what's working, so why don't I stay there in sustainability land?
Right.
It's
And
simple.
instead of feeling powerless against all of that, and I felt powerless against the what I thought was the inevitability of having a heart attack,
Yeah.
just because of family history and a lifelong obesity.
Mhm.
I felt powerless against that. I no longer feel powerless against any of those things. And, you know, stuff happens and we live in a broken world, and, there's a lot. That's not to say I will never have any health issues, but I don't have that fear that I'm just feeding into it all the time.
Mhm.
I know now how to take care of this body that has been given to me. And it feels better and it functions better. And I've had so many, you said the weight loss is just part of it. Yeah, the weight loss is a lot of fun because that's what people notice. And that's awkward at the same time because everybody notices. And we've had a conversation with one of the other people in the group, do you get offended when people say, "Oh, you look good now?" Like, I looked terrible
I
before.
looked bad before. Yeah, wait. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but obviously you have to accept that as wow, I notice what you're doing and I see you. And being seen is fun. Um, Buying new clothes is fun. Being in a size that I literally have never been in before is a lot of fun. But it's also having energy to do really anything that I want to do, not having those slumps in the middle of the day, my mood being much more stable rather than roller coasterish, um, no joint pain. If I want to try a new activity, I'm not afraid to do that, which is partly because I know now that my body can do it. Um, I may not have ever done it before, but I'm not embarrassed about my weight. I'm not embarrassed about my lack of physical ability. Um, I may still look awkward doing it, but I'm gonna be okay being out there trying it. And all of those things are so much bigger than the number on the scale.
Yeah, I fully get that. And I love hearing you talk like that because it is such a shift. It's
It
wonderful.
is. It is.
Yeah. So in wrapping up this conversation, we'll have more because there's no way anyone's going to be shutting us up at this point. We have so much to share and to just talk about. And I just treasure these talks. Can we talk about body positivity and the body positivity that has kind of become a movement, so to speak, that I hear?
Mhm.
When you hear body positivity, what does that mean to you now and before? And all along this journey you've been on. Mm.
So, especially recently, there has been a movement toward, just love your body, whatever size it is, and, be proud of who you are. And I think there's something big about that because we tend to hide when we are overweight. And and that shouldn't be how we interact with the world. We shouldn't interact with the world because of our weight. We shouldn't hide because of how much we weigh, and our lack of confidence should not come from what our bodies look like. And I think that's really, really important. But I also knew that I was living in a body that would not continue to be healthy. There was just no way to do it. The extra weight, the lack of movement because I couldn't or didn't, because it's so much easier to sit on the couch than it is to get up and move when you're overweight. So there's really a juxtaposition there of, yes, we should have a positive feeling about who we are and our worth. We talked about it earlier. Our worth should not be tied to the number on the scale or the size of clothes that we wear. But there's something so important about having a body that is internally healthy. And again, I said I didn't have any known underlying health issues because I was always waiting for, what's coming. But my joints ached and I didn't have the stamina to walk and walk and walk. And I didn't move in a way that allowed me to do a lot of things. So it limited my ability to do things, but it also, that wasn't going to get any better. Through the pandemic, as we all became less active, I realized that I was having trouble getting up off the floor,
Mhm.
and that was not okay. Um, and movement obviously helped that, but taking 70 pounds off of my joints also helped that. And so I think it's two sides of a coin. We need to be confident in who we were created to be, but also cognizant that we have this machine that does run well if we give it everything that it needs to run well.
I love it. That's well put. Thank you for sharing that. Because there's a certain level, even though there's no known disease, that just means something hasn't been diagnosed, right?
Right.
You had never had a diagnosis. But if we just take the excess body fat that someone is putting onto their frame, if we just look at that as what it is, that is just showing that our fuel is not being partitioned well. And then we have to look at and see what are these underlying issues. And even when all that blood work comes back, quote unquote, normal, right? Like how many times has the blood work looks fine? So I must be okay. But there are patterns going on behind there. And again, because this machine that we're saying, this body is very dynamic and she's resilient and she can put up with our shenanigans for quite some time, right? So she
Yeah.
puts up with all this until she finally throws in that towel. And as you'll hear me talk about, it's like at first there's a little nudge, like, hey, boss, boss is the brain. Hey, boss, something's going on down here. We got a little problem. Boss is like, it'll be fine. Then eventually it's like a big shake, like, hey, now we're getting some symptoms. Maybe they come and go. Maybe they're here just a little while and they go away. And we're like, whoa, okay, we must be fine, right? We must
Right.
be healthy. And then
Dodge that bullet.
eventually, yeah, and then eventually the body is just like, look, I done had it with you. I have had it. So here we are. Now we're going to have some consistent symptoms and you better do something about it. And if you don't, well, then, the rest is on you. And this is your body talking to you. And we might ignore these things. Or we look around and we're like, all right, well, everyone else is, putting on a little extra weight, so to speak, or a little extra fat. Okay, I'm kind of in that median realm, but literally behind those metabolic scenes, there is a growing problem. There's a mounting issue, and as that continues, we are eventually going to be slapped with a diagnosis. We are eventually going to hear whatever terms that in our mind, like you say, the back of your mind, you were always just kind of waiting, like, oof, I know eventually something's coming. And as we've talked about many times, sometimes the first symptom of a heart attack is death, or at least the first outward symptom. People do, I firmly believe people have symptoms well before that. They just either ignore them, they say those scary words of, oh, maybe it'll go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they put themselves so far on that back burner, again, under that broiler, that if it were someone else, it'd be a 5 alarm fire. I'd be right there at that ER, making sure it happens. But because it's me and I'm too busy taking care of everyone else and not prioritizing myself, I guess I am waiting for that major signal. And so, yeah, body positivity. I love people, period. I don't care what your color is. I don't care what your size is. I love you as a human. It's not healthy at a certain level. Now there are different body styles, body builds. Like, I'm never going to be skinny. That will never be. If I'm skinny, you're like, oh, something's going on there. But
Right.
for other people who are just built in that skinny, that thin, that does not equate to healthy either, right? Their
Mhm.
number on the scale may be within a range that's, some mucky muck has determined is healthy, but metabolically behind the scenes, they might be a train wreck. Who knows? So we can't say that skinny is the goal either, right? It's the ability to keep up with our activities that we want. It's that strength, it's that resilience, it's the ability to sleep and wake up rested. It's all those other things, how we deal with our stress. And yeah, there are times, even for yours truly, where stress gets the best of me and I'm a flipping mess. But I don't judge myself. I don't say, oh, you're doing it all wrong, you're such a hypocrite, all that stuff. I'm like, oh, you're having a human moment. What do you know? You are a mere mortal. Sorry to tell you.
Love that.
You're a mere mortal, and this is just how it goes. And it's such a beautiful way to relate to ourselves. So for me, this isn't about anyone else. I love sharing what I get to do. I love celebrating the wins and helping people walk through this. And, as I say, walk alongside folks. But for me, it's like just being able to experience life in a different way. It, there's nothing that substitutes for it at all. Yeah. And
And
knowing
there's
that.
no way to believe that this, had you said to me in the beginning all of the things that would change and where I would be, I would have said, yeah, right. I've heard that before. I didn't dare to believe that I could be where I am, and I had no idea how beautiful it would be. And part of it was because I wouldn't allow myself to be. But little by little along the way, it was sort of, oh, we really can, I really can fill in
It,
the blank.
yes.
Yeah.
Uh, I love that. Well, I think that's a great place to end this conversation. And
Mm.
I want to thank everyone who's been listening, or if you've caught snippets of this. If you're just catching a little portion, there's more than likely a link somewhere in the YouTube description to the full conversation. And subscribe to the channel so that you can catch the next conversation. I think April and I have some big things in our future. Just she's been inspirational to me and to others on our 12-week journey. But also it's like once you realize just what's going on inside this amazing body and how you see the suffering everywhere. That's the part that breaks my heart, is the suffering. Oh, so much everywhere. So
I want people to, first of all, just know that it can be different, but to feel the freedom that I feel that I never dreamed was possible. And that sounds very cliche saying it, but that really is what it is. It's a freedom that I never dreamed was possible.
and you can sustain it for your life now. This
Yeah.
is just the way you live. You're not on a diet. You're living. And I
Yeah.
think that's the key. Oh,
Yeah,
I can't wait for, yeah.
there's no fear of relapse or gaining it back, or there really is not the fear that I had every other time before. And that's where the freedom comes from.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that, and for being here with me today. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.